Hello, this is Brian Hardin, Director of External Affairs with Alabama Farmers Federation, and welcome to this legislative wrap-up in this special Capital Connection. Today with us we've got Preston Roberts and Russ Durrance. Preston is Director of Agricultural Legislation for the Federation, and Russ Durrance, Director of State Legislative Affairs. And we just wanted to kind of give our members an opportunity to get a nice summary of the legislature, and I know we're walking away with some great wins on behalf of the Federation and on behalf of our members, and really excited about that for the Federation. And also, I think some takeaways that we would like to share with our members today. So, Preston, I want to kind of kick it off to you. Kind of what was your biggest takeaway maybe from the session, or what you would kind of want to share with the members today?
Yeah, we had a great session. Being about 2 weeks out now from the end of the session, I've had a little bit of an opportunity to kind of think back and think about some of those wins that we had and maybe just some overall takeaways. And I would say the pace overall was the one thing that kind of sticks out to me.
No doubt.
This is the fourth year of the quadrennium, and so really anxious to get back to campaign for a lot of those members, and really wanted to introduce a lot of legislation that meant a lot to constituents back home. So that meant a really crowded field of bills that when we have a bill, you have to compete against all those local interests. But really pleased with how we ended up. This year we had a farm package, which is a little bit different than what we have done in the past. We have been more in a protection mode, but this year we went out on offense and had a farm package of bills that really was a result of issues that our members had in the field. We had 3 bills. One dealing with the taxation of grain bins, one dealing with the taxation and county business license, and also the Sweet Grown Alabama Act. And so being on offense was a little bit different this year, but thank goodness right there at the end we were able to get all 3 of them passed.
Yeah, and you mentioned there's those things that we try to do proactively, and there's those things that you have to battle back, and with all those, they're very important with our members and their participation. But another thing that's very important, you got to have good sponsors. And so Russ, maybe talk a little bit about with our farm package, who were our go-tos this year, and kind of give them a little thank you as well.
Yeah, so earlier this year, dealing with county business licenses, we had Representative Gil Isbell help sponsor that one in the House, as well as Tom Butler in the Senate. Gil was able to get in studio with us actually one afternoon, and we were able to feature him on the Capital Connection. So appreciate all of Gil's work on that. I know he's gearing up for a tough campaign as well. But Sweet Grown Alabama featured Van Smith, as well as Steve Livingston in the Senate. So Van obviously carried it in the House, Steve in the Senate. I think the Senate version was the bill that ended up passing, but both of them were crucial in getting that bill to final passage. And then I guess the last bill there in the farm package is dealing with ad valorem taxes on our grain bins, and that was Wes Kitchens there in Arab carried that one for us in the House, as well as who am I forgetting, Preston?
Senator Larry Stutz.
Larry Stutz, our Senate Ag Chairman there, carried that one for us in the Senate. So again, only one person's name kind of gets there on it for final passage, but both of our sponsors for the Senate and House companions on those bills were very critical.
I think you bring up a good point, in that it is so important to have a good sponsor. And that's one thing that I really appreciated about the farm package sponsors, is that sometimes you give a legislator a bill and you're the one who ends up having to work it as the lobbyist. But we had some sponsors this year that went to work.
Yeah, they really did a good job for us and helped us get those things through. I guess we were sitting there, Brian, on the second to last day of the legislative session working on the farm package, thinking that we may lose it all, guys, but we got it through, and it really wasn't us, but it was the folks out there on the floor. They cared about those bills. They cared about what they were carrying on behalf of our members, and they helped us get it done. So they were the ones who really got it for us.
Preston, talk a little bit about too, because I think we'll use the term leadership, and maybe we say that we understand what we're talking about, but it goes to this point that y'all have both brought up. You have sponsors. What you think should maybe sometimes be, okay, this is a process you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's done. But there are a lot of things going on. There's a lot of conversation. There's a lot of anticipating what's next. And involved with that is the leadership, really, of both caucuses and both houses. So maybe talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. I can't say enough about the leadership in both houses, particularly Speaker Pro Tem Greg Reed was outstanding in those final days and trying to navigate some really tough issues with members in his caucus and in the minority caucus as well. And he just always does a masterful job of handling those and navigating, and really made the difference for us. And in the House, can't say enough about Speaker McCutcheon as well. When we had our farm package of bills ready to be on the calendar, he picked 2 of the 3 farm bills for the top of the calendar. And we were talking about it earlier. The position on the calendar makes all the world of difference, because the higher you are, the higher you are on the calendar, the better chances you have of getting final passage on the floor. So both in each chamber made a world of difference.
Yeah, no doubt. And too, even though we are in a super majority situation with the Republicans, I mean, the minority caucus in both chambers, Russ, of course, are very important to us in passing those bills.
Yeah, we were able to have Pebble and Warren in here at one point in time talking about the peanut becoming the state legume. We did a great job in the House this year with our House Minority Caucus. Whether it was the forest products tag that Wes Allen carried for us, or the peanut being the state legume, or our farm package of bills. Those were things that, we went to those folks and we sat down with Anthony Daniels, the leader there in the House, and said, hey, what do we need to do to help work on these bills? Let us talk these through with you. And they were a big help as well. So obviously when we got some of those bills upstairs to the Senate, we had the same conversations. We were able to work through some of those things, work through the differences with some of those bills, and eventually they did get passed. But those are conversations that you've got to have. They're crucial for final passage on those bills. But we were thankful for everybody willing to meet with us, sit down with us, so that we could have those conversations.
That's right. That's part of it too. You get some challenging questions, or maybe some more discussion that certain members want to have. And I think about with Senator Bobby Singleton, and appreciate the conversations we had. And it also reminded me another thing that we had the opportunity to lean on really this year was Auburn University's Department of Agricultural Economics. I know with every bill that potentially has an impact to the state budget, you've got to know what that number is. And we didn't have that necessarily with those. So Preston, maybe talk a little bit about what we had to go to as Plan B there.
Sure. So 2 of our bills had fiscal impacts on them. And so what typically happens is that those members and those sponsors go to the Legislative Service Agency to get what they call a fiscal note. And that basically says, hey, what is this going to cost the budget? How much is this tax incentive or this tax exemption going to cost us on the back end? Well, with our bills, that fiscal note came back as indeterminable. And so we really didn't have any information to provide to these members who were trying to make a decision on the legislation, what impact it would have. So we went to Auburn, like you said, and man, they turned it around just in no time and had us accurate data that we were able to provide to those members, particularly the budget chairman, and say, okay, this is what Auburn University has said about the impact of the Sweet Grown Alabama Act or the grain storage facility exemption. So that was just, it made all the difference in the world, and I think you're right. They deserve all the thanks in the world for what they did this session for us.
It really did. Seeing them be able to play a role in giving us that information on behalf of farmers in the state was really helpful. And then Russ, we talked about it earlier, sometimes you go on offense and we try to pass things. Well, we had defense on a big issue again, and that was gambling. And we talked about that a little bit earlier this session, but maybe share a little bit from your perspective about as we went through that battle, if you will, in both chambers.
Yeah, so like Preston alluded to earlier, it was the 4th year of the quadrennium, so there are voters back home throughout the state of Alabama who are telling their elected officials, hey, I'd really like the opportunity to be able to vote on this thing back home in the district. So very early on in the session, we knew that Senator Greg Albritton was going to be bringing a bill in the Senate that dealt really more with full-style casinos, full-style casino gaming and whatnot, and all that would entail. It included additional sites within the state, but as time went on and as we were made aware of the bill and saw that it had been dropped, it never really seemed to pick up any steam, Brian. There were a lot of different folks who were opposed to gaming, not just the Farmers Federation, but other interest groups up there walking around the halls at the State House who were opposed. But that bill never really saw the light of day. It never made it on the calendar, and it never made it onto the floor there in the Senate to be voted on. So Coming back after spring break, I guess it was, we get back in town and we find out that, well, now the House has one too. So the Senate one never picked up, so now we've got a bill down in the House, but it really wasn't a replica of what you saw in the Senate. It was a bill that was really dealing more just with a statewide lottery. That bill as well did not end up ever kind of coming to fruition. It never made it to committee, and it also never made it to the floor. So it was a battle for us. It was a battle for a lot of the other folks that were working on this thing, but I guess we really kind of thought that we might see that in the fourth year of the quadrennium. We may see gambling pick up a little bit more steam. And we saw the bills dropped, but we never really saw them move anywhere. So thankful, certainly on our part, not to see those things move.
And I think that's an example of an issue, whether we're playing defense or offense. The members back home truly make a difference. If they are engaged in on behalf of the policy that they help pass, sure, we're the representative in the halls, we're carrying that message. But the difference is truly the members on a lot of these really tough and close votes. Switching gears a little bit though, and we'll kind of go back to some wins and some victories for the Farmers Federation. We probably don't talk maybe quite as much about the budget, but I know we had three really positive things that came through the budget this year. A lot of things that we support, such as CAFO registration fees, ag in the classroom. There's a lot of things we could talk about, but I think we've got three today that we would like to really highlight with our members. One is the 4-H and FFA. Russ, if you want to talk a little bit about that and how appreciative we are to Representative Nathaniel Ledbetter on kind of bringing us some of those ideas and opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. So Nathaniel Ledbetter had originally dropped a bill that dealt with kind of helping out 4-H and FFA, and it kind of brought about this conversation with us and him that, hey, what can we do to help strengthen that? And that was a question that he kind of put on us. How can we help add value to our 4-H and FFA programs throughout the state of Alabama? So Preston kind of went to work on that, working with the folks at the FFA office and folks involved in 4-H and saying what would really move the needle for these programs. And what we ended up coming up with, or what Representative Ledbetter ended up coming up with, was about $275,000 in the state budget that would help pay for affiliate memberships for FFA. We've got a lot of kids involved in ag programs throughout the state of Alabama in their high schools, but they're not necessarily wearing the blue jacket because they're not paying those membership dues. So what this $275,000 in the budget would do would be able to purchase those memberships for some of those kids, which would allow the state of Alabama to really have kind of more voting delegates and a bigger role on the national level. So that's pretty important. And then the second item was $125,000 for a 4-H youth livestock specialist. This would be somebody who's really not necessarily working directly with your folks back home in your counties, but they're actually going out and helping train other 4-H employees and other folks like that who would be able to help put on shows, teach them how to put on shows, fundraise for shows, etc. So $125,000 for a new position within 4-H. So those are two things that we were really happy to see passed. I think they are going to add a lot of value to our youth programs in the state and for 4-H and FFA both.
Yeah, very exciting. And I think we need to definitely take this opportunity to give a special thank you to Senator Arthur Orr and Representative Danny Garrett as chairs of the Ways and Means Education budget committees in the respective houses, and really all those committees. And then switching to the general fund, certainly want to thank Senator Albritton and Representative Steve Klaus for their help on a new item with this forest product specialist. Tell us about that, Preston.
Yeah, really excited about the forest product specialist. This is something that is so needed in the state of Alabama. As we've seen timber prices just fluctuate, especially over the past several years, and what we really need is more industry in the state. That's the way that we feel like we can really add value to Alabama's timber industry. And I'm really excited to see this position be funded by the state in order to recruit new industries and just have a new resource for a lot of our timber producers out there. I really think that it is a wise investment by those general fund budget chairmen to really invest into Alabama's forestry sector. So really excited to see that. And I'll say one more thing about our budget chairman that I think that our members would appreciate is just how good a stewards, I guess for lack of a better word, our budget chairmen are. They recognize that this money is taxpayer money and they want to spend it wisely. And so when we go to them and we ask for these types of funds, they look at it very closely. It's not just, hey, your wish is our command type of thing, but they're really studying it and making sure that it's really that the money is spent wisely. So I think that's important to note.
That, well said, and I think anything that we bring forward to them, that's all we can ask is have a fair hearing. And the other exciting thing I think about the forest product specialist, and to remind our members, this was a direct result of the Alabama Farmers Federation's policy development process at work. You had a need from landowner members who were saying, hey, to help improve prices, we need to look at ways to do that. And it went through our policy process, was passed by voting delegates at the annual meeting. Mr. Parnell then appointed a study committee, so it was a very thoughtful process. Then we were able to bring the final product. This is what this study committee of farmers and landowners came up with, and this is what we're asking you on behalf of the Federation. So it feels good when we can do that on behalf of members and see something to completion with the help of our legislators. Well, again, we could talk about a lot of great things. It has been a successful session, and we are very appreciative to our legislature, to the leadership, to our committee chairs, the ones we've mentioned, so many others. And again, as we've said, we're thankful to our members. They're the backbone, the foundation. We are carrying their priorities to the legislature. As we look ahead, let's just kind of give them an overview. What does the next year look like as we wrap up this regular session? What's ahead in the next few months, Russ?
Yeah, so coming up May 24th, you've got your primaries. That's going to be something that'll be fun to go through as we're looking forward to that. But shortly after that, Brian, we've got one more kind of round, in my opinion, with this last group that's elected right now. We've got to deal with the second round of ARPA funding. So right when this legislative session started, we kind of broke into a special session and dealt with, kind of divvying up some of this federal funding from the American Rescue Plan. So we've got another tranche of funding coming at the end of the summer, so we're going to get one more go at it with this group of folks here to kind of figure out what we're looking at for that funding. So I'm curious kind of what other groups are bringing. When this first round came through, we kind of focused on some pretty key projects. We looked at water and sewer infrastructure, we looked at broadband, and looked at different ways that money could go back to the state kind of in a couple of different unique ways. But I think there's going to be kind of some more asks and some more kind of people coming in and looking for different ways that they can get some funding into their industries. So once we wrap up that special session sometime at the end of the summer or in early fall, we'll have an organizational session where they'll bring in all of the newly elected officials and they'll go over kind of who your leadership's going to be. Mac McCutcheon, the speaker there in the House, he is retired, so we're going to be having a new speaker. They'll elect all their new majority and minority leaders and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how everything shakes out.
And then we'll do it all again starting next March, right,
Mm-hmm.
Preston?
Yeah, it seems like a long way, but it'll be here before you know it.
Yeah, and so, during the off season, I think it's a good reminder for our members too. We want to hear from them. We want to hear what challenge or issues are out there. That's where we, identify needs. And sometimes those can be addressed legislatively. Sometimes maybe that needs to go in a different direction, but it's all about their engagement. So thank you again for all your work on behalf of the Farmers Federation. You as our members, you make the difference, and we feel the support, and our legislators hear you and know that you are out there working hard. So on behalf of Russ Durrance and Preston Roberts, this is Brian Hardin for your special legislative wrap-up of the Capitol Connection.